Billy Tayac, a Piscataway leader, Piscataway chief that lived in Maryland. And they gave him a task of finding sleeping quarters for all of those natives that came in with the American Indian movement on that longest walk. And he found different places for them to stay at a few churches in the D.C. area. But as politics would have it, when they got to D.C., all of a sudden, well, no, you can't stay in our church anymore. So now they have all these native people that have no place to stay. So they spoke and petitioned the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA. And they said, okay, well, we'll open up the BIA doors and you can sleep in the basement. So they went to the BIA building and they began to sleep in the basement, staying in the basement. Well, then they look outside and there's buses rolling up with police and riot gear surrounding the building. And they're like, hey, they had to lock the doors. And they barricaded themselves inside the Bureau of Indian Affairs building. Billy Tayac being one of those people, as well as several others that were born and raised here on the East Coast during that time. So when you heard about the American Indian movement taking over the BIA building, they weren't really taking it over. They were just kind of, locked in to secure themselves. And then they finally took it over, you might want to say. And from that takeover, Billy Tayac became the East Coast American Indian representative. On his territory in southern Maryland, the same places we went to when I was a little boy in the 70s, back in the 80s, he started bringing in the American Indian movement to set up organizations, set up mindset. And when he did, in that 70s period, the late 70s, he was speaking with our former chief, well, I still call him chief, Mark Gould. And he came to Mark. So, Mark, what are you going to do for your people? You know you're Indian. You know your community exists. What are you going to do for your people? And through the assistance of Billy Tayac, through the assistance of his father, Chief Turkey Tayac, our community in Ghoultown, in Bridgeton, we reorganized ourselves. And then we became known as the Nanticoke Lenape Indians of New Jersey. We took on that name. Later on, we changed it to the Nanticoke Lenape Tribal Nation. It wasn't an easy task, because Billy Tayac, he called on people like my father, my mother, who knew our histories. He called on the Gould family, the Pierce families, to stand up and try to organize who we were. And so people like my mother and Betty Jackson, they went around door to door speaking to our families. And then you had people like my grandmother who would say, you can't do that. You can't come out and say that you're Indian in public, because they're going to take everything you have. Because I remember when they took it from other Indian people that lived here, right here in Salem County, Cumberland County areas. She remembered that. She was born in 1903. One of her greatest days was when she was able to stand up and put a regalia on. I say regalia, her native dress. That was one of her most happiest days of her lives, when she was able to finally do that without fear of being persecuted.